Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings Week 6 running back picks. There's a lot of guys at the high end that we like this week, and also a lot of guys who may be in play at the low end. I'm going to mention a couple of them at the end of the video, but right now as I'm filming the video, a lot of it is still up in the air with guys who may be injured or may be playing or may not be. So while I mention these guys, definitely make sure you look on Sunday before finalizing your rosters. And make sure some of these guys towards the end of this list are going to be in today, because there are a lot of injury concerns now that we're about a month and a half into the season. A lot of running backs have some nicks and are banged up, so just make sure that all these guys are playing before you put one of them in your roster. Hold on one second here. I'm going to call up the spreadsheet. This way we can take a look at some of the guys and what they have to offer this week. The first guy we're going to be talking about is going to be LeVeon Bell. No surprise at 8,500. There's a couple other high-end running backs, though, that I do think are in play this week, and I will have some exposure to in my rosters. Matt Forte at 7,100 makes for a pretty solid play. Arian Foster at 7,000 could also be a guy with a lot of upside. Chris Ivory at 5,100 is somebody who's very interesting this week. And then we'll talk about some of the cheap options when we get there at the end. That's going to be guys like Thomas Rawls, Javaris Allen, and obviously, Charkandrick West, who's somebody that everybody is pretty much kind of talking about this week. But I'm going to give you my thoughts on some of those guys, because they are some cheap options that you can fit into your roster, depending on how the injury situation works out for the rest of the week. The first guy we're going to talk about, though, is going to be LeVeon Bell at 8,500. He gets 26 touches a game since returning off of the suspension list. He's averaging 20 carries and 6 receptions for 127 total yards per game. So far, he's scored a touchdown in every game that he's been in, and he's the focal point of that offense. He has a floor of around 24 points, and I want to show you guys how he got there. If you take the 127 yards, which has basically been the low yardage total that he's had since he returned, you add the 6 reception average to it, you get 18.7 points. And he's basically scored a touchdown in every game so far, which gives him 24.7 points. That means that you have a floor of 24.7 based on his first 3 weeks of playing so far in the league. And the thing we like about LeVeon Bell is he's a game flow proof back. That means if they're winning, he's the guy who's getting the handoffs and running the ball for them. If they're losing, he's a guy who's going to be going out and catching passes and picking up yardage that way. So no matter what happens, no matter which way the game flow goes, he's somebody who's going to be on the field and racking up yardage, which is something that we really like in our cash games, because it gives you the safety that even if you're wrong on expecting him to, get 20 carries and be running the clock out late and Pittsburgh to be winning, you can still expect that he's going to get you some points, because he will still have some carries, probably somewhere in the range of 10 to 15, but he'll make up for it by having, 5 to 8 catches to go along with it. Probably some yardage that way, and we'll still be getting the goal line work, so he could get a touchdown. So LeVeon Bell is expensive, but what you're doing is paying up for the safety. He makes for a great cash game play, although I think there are other guys you could look at with more upside for a GPP. One of those guys could be Matt Forte today. Detroit has allowed the 8th most fantasy points to running backs so far this year, and Forte is just shy of 25 touches per game, with about 4 catches per game being an average. Now, that's actually a little bit low for him. He had games last year where he reached double digits in catches out of the backfield. He's averaging about 120 yards per game as of now, and he's another one of those every down backs that's game flow proof. The thing I like most about him is he does much better when he has Jay Cutler in there at quarterback. His 2 bad games this year were when Cutler was out, but when Cutler has been in there, he's averaging 23 points with Cutler under center. It has a little bit to do with the fact that he tends to see a few more passes when Cutler is out on the field, and that definitely helps his fantasy score. At a price of only 7,100, though, he hasn't been scoring a lot of touchdowns this year. If he can get in the end zone and add it to the normal production that he already has in this game against Detroit, which I do think is something that's likely, he could wind up with a really big score at a really square price for you this weekend. The next guy I want to talk about is Arian Foster. Now, Foster does have some nicks. He has been banged up. They did hold him out of practice this week, but the reason they're holding him out is to kind of keep him fresh for this weekend. When he's in the game, he gets a ton of volume. The Jaguars have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to running backs so far this year, and last game, Foster had 28 touches, 19 carries, and 9 catches. The 9 catches alone are something that's kind of eye-popping and shows you that he's a big part of that offense. You know, again, another game flow proof back, whether it's him running the ball if they're winning or him going out of the backfield and catching passes. He's going to be somebody who they want to get the ball into his hands. None of the other running backs on Houston are really all that good. None of them stepped up and took any, initiative when Foster was out. So he really has no one he's splitting snaps with. The only time he comes off the field is if they think he's gassed and they want to give him a little bit of a breather. And judging by the 28 touches he has last game, you're still not going to see that happen all that often. The other thing I like about Foster is his numbers could even improve because he still hasn't seen his normal number of snaps. He saw about 34 in his first game. That number jumped up into the 40s in the second game, but that's still well below what he was playing most of the time last year. So especially with this Houston team being a team that runs so many plays out there and has been playing at such a high pace so far this year, Foster has a really good chance to put up a really big game against a defense that's been susceptible to running backs doing that same thing. Another guy I want to talk about is going to be Chris Ivory. Chris Ivory is favored and at home this week, which is something we always like to look for in our running backs. He's been averaging 22 touches per game and has had multiple games where he's had well over 20 touches. He's averaging 21 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown per game, which basically gives him about a 16.5-point floor. Add in the catch that he gets, probably somewhere around 17 as a floor, which would be a great return for a guy who's only 5,100. He should be running late to protect the lead in this game as Vegas expects the Jets to be winning. And the Redskins have given up 116 yards per game on the ground over the last 3 games. So despite the fact that their numbers look pretty good because they had a really good defense the first 2 games and they really limited teams on both the ground and in the air, the last 3 weeks they've been basically getting gashed on defense, both on the ground and through the air. So I do think Ivory's in a good spot to score a touchdown and pick up a lot of yards here. The last thing I wanted to discuss with you guys is the fact that we do have quite a few options this week of cheap players that you can put into your roster depending on how things work out. There's a couple guys through injury and a couple other guys who might have a chance to get in there depending on how the injury situation works out. The first guy I want to talk about is Charcandrick West. Now, he's going to be taking over the primary running back duties for Kansas City now that Jamal Charles is out. Now, here's the thing. We're going to put a little video together in a minute, kind of summing this all up. But we don't really know for sure if he's going to be the guy that's there. We know Niall Davis will probably see a little bit of work as well, although West should get the lion's share of it. So West is probably the number one option you want to try to target in this situation. But remember, Davis should also have a little bit of say in it. A couple other guys to keep an eye on. Javaris Allen. Right now, Lorenzo Taliaferro has been put on injured reserve and is out for the year. Justin Forsett got hurt at the end of that last game and sat out practice yesterday. If he can't go, or even if he's limited, you're going to see a lot of work for rookie Javaris Allen. So he's somebody else that you should have on your radar. It does look like Marshawn Lynch is going to play this week. So Thomas Rawls is probably not somebody who you still want to, keep rolling out there. If news does come down that Marshawn is going to miss this game, then obviously Rawls would be somebody else that will push up in there. So far at this point in the week, those are the guys towards the low end who we're looking at. Remember, TJ Yeldon was banged up and he sat out as well. Denard Robinson did practice yesterday, though. So if Yeldon is out, you're probably going to see a lion's share of the carries go to Robinson, and that could make him a good play at a cheap price, too. Again, until Saturday and Sunday roll around and we really see the injury reports, a lot of these cheap guys are just guys to, put in the back of your head when you're building rosters. We won't know if any of them are going to be in or worthy of playing until closer to this weekend. But I just wanted you all to keep them in mind because they could be good plays at cheap prices if they do get the lion's share of the work. That's pretty much wraps it up for our running back video for week 6. Thank you guys as always, and stay classy, DFS.